What happens when Hollywood royalty meets morning television reality? What unfolds when two strong personalities clash on live TV in the most explosive way possible? You won't believe the dramatic confrontation that erupted on Good Morning America's set last night, leaving viewers absolutely stunned and one A-list guest storming off in fury. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Meghan Markle sits down with Michael Strahan for what was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance. The tension was palpable from the moment Meghan walked onto the GMA set. Something felt different about her demeanor. There was an edge, a defensiveness that seasoned viewers of the show hadn't seen before. Michael Strahan, ever the professional, welcomed her with his trademark smile. But even he seemed to sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Meghan, great to have you back on the show," Strahan began, settling into his chair with the ease of someone who's conducted thousands of interviews. "Let's talk about your latest project and how you're balancing your various endeavors." But instead of the typical gracious response viewers expected, Meghan's expression hardened immediately. "Michael, I have to stop you right there," she interrupted, her voice carrying an unmistakable bite. "I'm curious about the framing of that question. Are you asking me about balance because I'm a woman? Because I don't recall you asking male guests how they balance their various endeavors." The shift in atmosphere was instant and electric. Strahan, clearly taken aback but maintaining his composure, tried to clarify. "Meghan, that wasn't the intention at all. It's actually a question I ask many of our guests, regardless of gender, when they have multiple projects going on." "Really?" Meghan shot back, leaning forward in her chair with an intensity that made the camera operators adjust their angles. "Because I've watched this show, Michael, and I've seen how differently you approach interviews with women versus men. There's always this underlying assumption that we can't handle multiple responsibilities without it being some sort of struggle." The audience in the studio began to murmur, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Strahan's media training kicked in as he attempted to redirect the conversation. "I think there might be a misunderstanding here, Meghan. Why don't we talk about your upcoming charitable initiatives instead?" This pivot only seemed to fuel Meghan's frustration further. "There it is again," she said, her voice rising slightly. "The assumption that, as a woman, my work should primarily focus on charity and giving back, while male entrepreneurs get to talk about their business ventures and ambitious projects without the conversation being steered toward their philanthropic obligations." The control room was likely in chaos at this point, with producers scrambling to figure out how to handle the rapidly deteriorating situation. Strahan, to his credit, remained professional, but his jaw tightened noticeably. "Meghan, I think you're reading into something that simply isn't there. These are standard questions that we ask all of our guests." "Standard questions?" Meghan's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Michael, let's be honest about what's happening here. You and this network have a history of treating certain guests with kid gloves while subjecting others to unnecessary scrutiny. I've seen the difference in how interviews are conducted, and frankly, I expected better from you." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Strahan's expression shifted from diplomatic to genuinely offended. "I need to stop you there, Meghan. I've been doing this job for years, and I treat every single guest with respect and professionalism. If you have specific concerns about how this interview is being conducted, we can address them. But I won't sit here and have my integrity questioned on live television." "Your integrity?" Meghan's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "That's rich, Michael. Where was this integrity when other members of my family were being discussed on this very show? Where was the professional courtesy then?" The reference to previous coverage was like lighting a fuse. Strahan's patience, which had been stretched thin, finally showed signs of strain. "Meghan, if you have issues with how news was covered, that's a conversation for another time and place. Right now, we're here to talk about your current projects, not to relitigate past media coverage." But Meghan was far from finished. "Another time and place? How convenient. It's always another time and place when it comes to accountability, isn't it? You're quick to ask probing questions when it serves your narrative, but when it comes to examining your own practices, suddenly it's not the right forum." The studio audience was completely silent now, captivated by the raw confrontation unfolding before them. Strahan leaned back in his chair, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "Meghan, I think we need to take a step back here. This interview is going in a direction that's not productive for anyone." Productive for who, exactly? Meghan fired back. For you? For the network? Because from where I'm sitting, this is the most honest conversation that's happened on this show in years. The problem is that you're not comfortable with that honesty when it's directed at you. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Camera operators exchanged glances, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. Strahan's professionalism was being tested like never before, and cracks were starting to show in his typically unflappable demeanor. Look, Meghan, he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. I understand you might have frustrations with media coverage in general, but coming on my show and attacking my character isn't going to solve anything. I've always been fair in my interviews, and I resent the implication otherwise. Fair? Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. Michael, let's talk about fair. Is it fair that I have to sit here and defend my right to be treated with the same respect you'd show any other guest? Is it fair that every question comes loaded with assumptions about my motivations or capabilities? That's not what's happening here, Strahan insisted. But his voice was rising now, matching her intensity. You're projecting issues onto this interview that simply don't exist. I asked you about your projects. That's what we do here. That's literally the point of having guests on the show. The point? Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair rolling back slightly. The point, Michael, is that you and this industry have created a system where certain people are expected to be grateful for any platform, no matter how they're treated. Well, I'm not grateful for being condescended to, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. The studio fell into stunned silence. Strahan remained seated, but his hands were gripping the arms of his chair tightly. Meghan, please sit down. Let's try to have a rational conversation about this. Rational? She laughed bitterly. There's that word again. When men get passionate about injustice, they're called leaders. When women do it, we're told to be rational. I am being rational, Michael. I'm rationally recognizing that this interview is over. She began to remove her microphone, her movements sharp and decisive. Strahan finally stood up, realizing the situation was spiraling completely out of control. Meghan, please, let's just take a breath and start over. Start over? She turned to face him directly, microphone now in her hand. Michael, this isn't about starting over. This is about recognizing patterns that have been in place for years. You want to know what my current project is? It's calling out exactly this kind of treatment. And congratulations, you've just provided a perfect example. The audience was completely captivated by the spectacle, some pulling out phones despite studio policies. Strahan made one last attempt at damage control. Meghan, I think you're misinterpreting the situation. We can work through this. Work through what exactly? She demanded. Your unwillingness to acknowledge that there might be bias in how you conduct interviews? Your inability to see that your questions come from a place of assumption rather than genuine curiosity? No, Michael, we can't work through that because you don't even see it as a problem. With that declaration, she dropped her microphone on the coffee table between them, with a sharp thud that echoed through the silent studio. The sound seemed to punctuate the finality of her decision. This interview is over, she announced, loud enough for everyone in the studio to hear clearly. I won't be a part of perpetuating the same tired dynamics that have plagued media coverage for decades. Strahan watched in apparent disbelief as she gathered her purse and began walking toward the studio exit. Meghan, please don't leave like this. We can discuss your concerns off camera. She paused at the edge of the stage area and turned back one final time. Michael, the fact that you think this is something to be discussed off camera proves exactly my point. Some conversations need to happen in the light, not hidden away where they're convenient for everyone else. And with that final statement, Meghan Markle walked off the Good Morning America set, leaving Michael Strahan standing alone on stage, the studio audience in shocked silence, and viewers at home witnessing one of the most dramatic exits in morning television history. The confrontation had escalated from a simple misunderstanding to a full-blown indictment of media practices, ending with a guest departure that no one in that studio will ever forget.